So the name
Beere.
Beere, what does it mean, and why did you have to name this play that?
Beere is the first daughter of every family in Yoruba land, more of the Egba, more common with the Egba people. It's the equivalent of Ada in Igbo.
Okay.
So, and amongst the women, Mrs. Kuti had grown in such stature that she was known as Beere.
Okay.
And she had, during those protests, become stronger than even the king, that it was more common to hear the word in greeting Beere than to hear Kabiyesi. Such that when she went into a crowd and the people went wild hailing her Beere, even the colonial administrators fled the scene. So that sounds like who a woman is.
Welcome to the International Women's Month, and we know that there's a lot happening. Of course, it's supposed to be the Women's Day, but we know this is a whole month we need to take to celebrate women because women are very significant to the whole world as it is, you know, a lot. And today we are doing something very special. We want to talk about the play that is celebrating also an important thing that happened in the 1940s, which is the role women played when there was an issue of taxation, heavy taxation. Women rose up in Abeokuta and what became the Egba Women's Revolt. There's a lot, you know, that led to that. But we want to even unpack how that happened and looking at what happened in the National Assembly, where 1st of March, the first of this same month, the National Assembly threw out a lot of provisions that were being included or proposed for inclusion in the national, in our constitution. So I have with me in the studio someone who wrote a play that is being premiered and it's discussing, the play is discussing, it's taking us back to the women's revolt in Abeokuta in the 1940s. So join me in welcome to Akweya TV this time, Abiodun Baiyewu of Global Rights and so many other platforms. I know you're doing a lot. You're most welcome.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. You wrote this. Why did you think this was important, a story to be told?
It became very, very important and very personal when due to a conversation I had had with my grandmother at a time when I was in transition in life, and I had stayed at her house for a while, and she had found me reading a book, Wole Soyinka's Ake, and I was coincidentally reading about the Egba Women's Revolt, his own memory of the Egba Women's Revolt, and she said, "Oh, can you see me and my sisters on the pages? Like you and your sisters?" Yes, we were there. But that information would have sounded, oh, fascinating to a lot of people. But then at that point in time, my great-grandfather was our father, was the Otun of the Egbas, which is like the vice president.
Okay.
And so that would be like the vice president's children joining a protest against Buhari. And so I made her tell me the story. And it comes to life when you meet people who were involved, when you hear the background stories. And I felt this is too good to let go of. And I'm a writer. I did what came naturally.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Oh, you did what came naturally. Naturally, by naturally, is it the protests or is it the storytelling?
The storytelling.
Yeah.
But the story, and I recently had to think about how the story also impacted my life. I mean, it wasn't just that she told me a story, I took it and I wrote, I had to go to libraries, I had to do things, but it changed the way I saw myself. It brought an identity that I had not thought about, and I think you would see the identity when you watch the play. It brought an identity that I would not have assumed had I not been privy to the very personal relation to that story about the role that I actually have to play in society. And I think that was where the trajectory changed for me in the type of jobs I did. And it's found me where I am.
Tell us what that's social background that could make women stand up and protest without needing the endorsement of men. Why is that? Is that society different from that of today?
Yes, I would say that the society has shifted significantly from then. Women didn't need the endorsement of men in those days to protest. Because you remember that just before the Abeokuta Women's Revolt was the Aba Women's Revolt. And they did not need the permission of men. What they got were the support of men to carry out those protests. But then I also say, because I've also had to do research in this area, that the pivotal points, the social turning points politically for Nigeria were always catalyzed by women. And I can prove it. Aba Women's Revolt, the Abeokuta Women's Revolt followed closely after. Very few people know about a woman called Alimotu Pelewura in Lagos, who was the Iyoloja. And men like Abat Macaulay needed her to make the Kola strike happen, because she was the one that instigated the pulling strike. And if you know anything about the Kola strike, it was the largest and most impactful labor strike in history, not just in Africa, across the world. Those were the things that moved us closer to independence. If you think about the Ivam Valley massacre, it was also the miners' wives who had said, no, we lock our husbands in. This strike, that was in Enugu, which was also part of what led to those coalitions forming towards independence. When you think about military rule, during the war, very few people, a lot of people tell about Soyinka, Wale Soyinka's role, but then don't talk about his sister's role in leading the nurses to saying that they were not paying the war taxes and what happened with them. Those were women as well, and those were part of the things that also helped to end the war. You think about the end of military rule, and the role women like Ayobe played leading, the CLO, leading CLO and fronting those men, writing those speeches, leading those protests. So that when we now begin, you think of the Enough is Enough, the petrol, you think about Bring Back Our Girls, you think about those pivotal, you think about Kudirat, you think about Bring Back Our Girls, and how these things have changed governments in Nigeria. And you think about those pivotal roles, and then you think, to take an example of all of those women, the Abeokuta Women's Revolt, that what we have evolved our history to remember is that Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti was the first woman to drive a car.
Just fashion, more like.
Yes, but that when you think about the deeper things and the things that she was able to achieve, that's a slap on the face. So the evolution of the narrative of the role of men and women in society in contemporary times has been very detrimental to women compared to their roles in the country, in the true history of this country.
So, are you a feminist?
Yes, I am.
So how do you feel when you have read these contradictions? Because the feminist narrative seems to be that Africa has always oppressed its women.
Human race has always oppressed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Human race has created castes so that if it is not a gender caste, it is a religious caste. If it is not a religious caste, it is a socioeconomic caste, which wasn't created by God, all men being created equal. So that caste system itself is humans have always oppressed themselves. For yourself.
I asked that question because, there were the African feminism, the womanism, the Afrocentric alternatives, to feminism. Yes. And I wonder usually why some of you don't identify in those senses, maybe as a womanist or something else, than as a feminist. What? I
think that we really should stop putting ourselves in boxes.
Yeah.
And that defining feminism in a way that suits a certain person to the exclusion of others will not be correct. I am a feminist, but then that I will define what feminism is for me and not by what somebody else has called it, is what I believe.
Okay. I'll go back to, so the name Beere. What does it mean, and why did you have to name this play that?
Beere is the first daughter of every family in Yoruba land, more common with the Egba people. It's the equivalent of Ada in Igbo.
Okay. So,
and amongst the women, Mrs. Kuti had grown in such stature that she was known as Beere.
Okay.
And she had, during those protests, become stronger than even the king, that it was more common to hear the word in greeting, Beere, than to hear Kabiyesi. Such that when she went into a crowd and the people went wild, hailing her Beere, even the colonial administrators fled the scene. So that sounds like who a woman is.
What were your most difficult moments writing this play?
Trying to get the facts right, scoring libraries and realizing there was very few materials, meeting survivors, not survivors, we were meeting people who were actually physically there and realizing how very few they were. I actually wrote this 13 years ago, so there were more of them then than now. I love to write, so it wasn't difficult. And when you write, you're a writer, so you know that it takes you over.
Yeah.
The story tells itself. You get to the point where you are not telling the story. You're just you're a glorified car, and it takes you to where it wants to go. And it took me to where it wanted to go.
Okay, I'll come back. We'll take a break. We'll go on a break, and then after this break, we'll come and find out what needs to be done to take this message, much further, beyond just the stage. We'll be right back.
Hey, what's up, people? My name is Solomon Lange, and you're watching Akweya TV. God bless you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ochaya Ojofu. I am the founder of Akweya Children Carnival. Watch Akweya TV.
Yemasni ame Veronica Ochido. Engaga ya Akweya TV.
Agatugolegadam. Ihiegu kama Oge David Ubede. Ngo Bagaji, Togolega Agatu, local government of Benue State. Ungo reporter Akweya TV. Akweya TV.
Hi, Akweya TV has got so many shows for you. We've got a Hangout with Busayo, we've got our interview shows, we've got women empowerment shows, and you can watch us on NTA Makodi Also, you can watch us on YouTube and different channels. I am Odoh Diego Okenyodo, and I think you will love everything you see on Akweya TV. Keep a date with us. Welcome back from the break. This is Akweya TV, where we serve you history, art, culture, and development. And as you can see, we have been having this wonderful conversation about a play that has been making waves, really, in terms of how women have been contributing to Nigeria's development. And I have the playwright here in the studio, Abiodun. You wrote this 13 years ago, right?
Yes.
Did you have to touch it up to
No.
become any more relevant?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, it felt like Nigeria just turned 360 degrees and we're back standing on the same spot we were 13 years ago, and we were 87, 88 years ago. It is police brutality was one of the things that led, or security forces brutality, what was the police then, was one of the things that led the women's protests and SARS.
Yeah.
you think about that. You think about taxation without representation.
Yeah.
So while people focus largely on the tax issues, one of the issues the women also had was that they were not represented on the Egba Native Council, and they demanded a place on the Egba Native Council. Corruption was a major thing. The Alake, for example, had banned rice, the importation of rice. Welcome back to Nigeria. Had banned the importation of rice, and had seized those who had smuggled rice in, turned them to his own store, and then was selling them. That level of corruption was going on. The demand for a people, for democracy, to govern themselves, to have a say in their own governance, was at the root of it all. And we found ourselves back then. The abject poverty, the lack of infrastructure, they were also protesting the fact that they were being taxed, but the taxes were not feeding their society. It wasn't building schools, hospitals, and things like that.
Just like today.
So you're back. And I was shocked about some of the words, because I had to read the script again recently when they had started rehearsals. And I was shocked about the choice of some of the words. Some of it was about maternal mortality in 2009, and maternal mortality has remained the same. One of the themes was what SARS did with a certain person. It's remained the same. And that SARS reverberated over the years till we got to 2020. To find words like, strangely, that I had written tactical maneuver, which then took us, it felt, wait a minute, was this prophecy? So yes, I think when you write and you go back many years later, sometimes it makes you feel like a prophet. Yeah. Laws don't change society. Culture does. And part of culture is art. If you want to change society fast enough, I'm a human rights advocate. That's what I do. That's my day job. But then I realized that people are more transformed by art. The whole of Africa leans on what Nollywood does and says than what they listen to in the news or elsewhere. I've been more transformed by what I have read in books, in novels. It's a novel that I would read and then finish the last page, be on a bus and think, the world changed and the rest of you didn't notice. It's creating that alternative universe, that alternative point of view, and we must keep doing that. We can't stop.
It's the month where women were asking for 35% seats in the National Assembly, and it got shut down by a National Assembly full of men. And you called yourselves to the streets, to the National Assembly. How did you personally feel, especially having this play, having done all of this, you have written this play and all of that. How did you feel? Do you still feel this sense of hope that you could still sell?
Yes, I'm very, very hopeful. And I'm grateful to everyone that's come out on the streets. I'm disappointed that the men are not coming out on the streets because this is 50% of this society, and if you don't support 50% of this society and tell them, go support yourself, that support will never be full. Yes, I still feel a sense of hope. I think that people don't fully understand what we're stuck against. And like I explained it to a minister recently, because he said, oh, well, nothing is free even in Freetown, that women have to fight and get what they want. I told him, I pay, if you were my twin brother and were born on the same day, and we got the same job and earned the same amount of money, which is also very, very unlikely because women usually earn less than men for the same job done, yeah, that we will pay exactly the same amount in taxes. But if you were to marry a foreign wife, you can pass your citizenship on to your wife. But I, your blood sister, born of the same mother, the same father, on the same day, will never have the hope of passing citizenship on to my foreign husband, which means that I don't have full citizenship rights. I also don't have indigenship rights, because then once I've married someone from another community or state, I automatically do not belong anywhere. Not that I belong to my state, but I don't belong anywhere, because politically I've committed suicide. I can't do politics where I come from, because they will say you've married someone else. And then I can't do politics where he comes from, because I don't belong. I'm not an indigene. We also need to visit these indigenship issues. That it is madness. It's part of what is tearing us apart as a people. So yes, it is very upsetting to think about the inequities we have allowed through our constitution. But the constitution is in ink. It can be erased. We still sell erasers. Yeah. And if there are no erasers, we can still tear pages.
And even delete the documents.
Tear the page. Tear the page and we rewrite. But not to insist on some form of equity is to keep our country underdeveloped. We're ranking currently, when it comes to politically equity, gender parity, with South Sudan, Sudan and Eritrea, which are some of the worst conflict-ridden countries in Africa. But then when you think about the different countries across our country, you have to stop and think that are the inequities part of the reason why we found ourselves where we found ourselves today? Are we allowing 50% of our population a chance? If 50% stay down, we all stay down. Yeah. So I'm fighting not just for the men, not just for the women, but then for everyone. Yeah.
Because it's like what Martin Luther King once said about a threat to justice anywhere, it is a threat to justice everywhere.
Everywhere, yes.
So you see inequity, how we treat our children.
Yes.
It's simply because we know we can allow more inequities elsewhere. When SARS treats young people the way it does, when whether lecturers raping young girls, whether preachers, pastors and religious leaders, it's because as a society we seem to admit that there should be so much inequity.
Yes, because when inequity favors you, you tend to be blind to the suffering of others, and to turn a blind eye. And also for those who are disadvantaged by that inequity, then they begin to strive to climb the ladder to where they're now advantaged. Well, there's certain things that cannot change. The color of our skin will not change. Our gender will not change. The color of our skin and our gender does not impede on our intelligence or our capacity. So why is that a criteria? Yeah.
So now with this play, Beere, is on stage in the cities. It's in Abuja, it's in Lagos. How does this message go much further than this? What are there some plans?
Well, I'd like to take it across the country, particularly to universities. It is a subtle call to arms for young people to say, remember where we're coming from. Okay, this is where we're coming from. Remember what your identity is. Pick it up and run with it. So yes, I'd like to take it across the country. I'm hoping to take it across the country later in the year and early next year.
Does it, do you also think of the women organizing? So at the on one hand is the consciousness, and then on the other hand is organizing into a force, like to be reckoned with. What lesson did you draw from your research while writing?
Well, one of the things I learned then that I didn't realize I'd learned, and in looking back, was it gave me a chance to study movements.
Yeah.
And I've been studying movements for a while. So, for example, people will say, why aren't we protesting right now with how bad things are in Nigeria? One of the things that happens with movements is the change has to be sudden to propel people forward. That's where art comes in, introducing that something different to propel people forward. But things disintegrated slowly. To build movements as well, you first have to help people belong. One of the things Mrs. Kuti had done then was created the Akweya Women's Union, where they were teaching women basic literacy, hygiene, how to take care of their homes, how to be more economically advantaged. And that brought a lot of women who were lower on the pecking order up to sit at the same table with middle-class women, with educated women, and they felt equal to them. That's something that we need to do again in our society, where people feel equal. And that in that equality to say, we need to then fight for our society becomes a natural message that will propel people forward.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's because we're running out of time, but is there any real final message, like calling more people to come register to see it, or what should we do?
Sadly, we're booked out, we're sold out in Abuja and in Lagos. And, you know, it's overwhelming. We're sold out. But it will come back again. I see this a very high appetite for it. Yeah. It will come back. I will write about the other women movements, so that no part of the country will feel we told one story and didn't tell the other.
No problem. You can tell one story, let someone else tell another.
Yeah, someone else can. For example, I've been thinking a lot about Miss Gambo, Ajia Gambo, a lot lately. Yeah. And yes, so I feel that she wants to borrow my pen. Yeah. I've also been thinking a lot about Alimo Tukwelewura. So
Gambo helped fight when I was expelled from the university in ABU. Yeah, I went to her house.
Is she calling your pen?
She is. I have done a lot of research about her, and I have even a book on her life.
Oh, God, I'd love to read that.
I can sell it to you at 3 million naira.
Just 3 million.
Yeah. But great. Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing the play when it's available for us, right? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for being with us, and do share this video and so many others. And if there are people that you think we need to talk to that can bring greater focus on development, please do let us know in the comment section or in the phone, on the phone number that's scrolling on the screen. Thank you very much.